Today I wanted to talk about the importance of scaffolding the teaching of writing in the primary classroom. And I think from my experiences, the greatest misconception comes when teachers think about these two seemingly competing kinds of ideas. One of them being the teaching of writing through the gradual release of responsibility, meaning modelling, shared writing or interactive writing, guided writing, and then the independent writing that the pupils do. Now, of course, this reflects and responds in the same way that we think about the gradual release of responsibility for reading, meaning that in the first stage, modelling, we're modelling the writing of either the particular genre that we're trying to teach the children, or we're modelling the use of particular language features, maybe some grammar, maybe some literary elements such as metaphors and similes and things like that. In the guided and interactive and shared sort of element, that middle place is when there's the crossover between the pupils doing and you as a teacher doing, and even together. And here's the great opportunity for you to be a teacher who writes. In my experience, my students were highly engaged in any kind of work around writing that I had done myself. And in fact, I let them challenge me by providing me with settings or characters and having to do that for my homework and then present that back to them. Very engaging. They love looking at that, analysing it, working out what I've done. And even when I would deliberately use particular elements or maybe leave those elements out, helping me to improve my writing. And of course, then there's the independent phase where pupils are to do these things on their own. However, we know in the primary classroom that never means unsupported. So there'll be the opportunities for them to put their learning into practice without high levels of scaffolding, but they're always there to have conversations with you. Where I see the confusion comes is that when teachers try to understand how that relates to what we call the writing process, that is planning a story, brainstorming all of the elements of who's in it, where is it, what's going to happen, doing your first draft, editing, and then moving on to having some kind of published piece of work. And in my experience, teachers will often see this as the teaching of writing. What I would like you to think about is that one of those elements is about teaching writing and the other is about the pupil's role. So they're not the same, and we need both. So we will teach the teaching of writing through something like the gradual release of responsibility. But at some stage, the pupils are going to go through the writing process as authors themselves, almost as part of that independent practice that we would do in the gradual release. But remember, we also have to teach the skills that are found in the process, like brainstorming, planning, drafting, editing, and proofreading. So this doesn't need to be this fight. There doesn't need to be one or the other. There needs to be both. One is the focus on teaching, and the second is the focus on the role that the pupils play as writers themselves. And don't forget, we also need something to come before all of that, what some people call building the field, which is learning or reading or preparing for what we're going to write about. Particularly important if you're thinking about non-fiction writing. I cannot sit down to write about frogs unless I've researched frogs to start with. So we might think of that as the beginning, this building the field, and then we move into that gradual release. And part of that is preparing our pupils to be writers themselves and to move through the writing process. That's how I see it, and I'm hoping that I have a chance to speak to some of you about how that plays out in your own classrooms.